Superman, a character who's been around for so long that pretty much everybody knows who he is. Even my grandma, who doesn't read any comics and probably hasn't seen anything from the DC EU, AU, or AMU. Not only is he easy to recognize, he's also loved by pretty much everyone. Except for me. Yeah, I was one of those guys who didn't really like Superman because he's boring, lame, and not an interesting character. He's just some alien who can fly and he fights bad guys. That was my opinion until I read this, For All Seasons, the comic that made me like Superman. This 4-issue comic, written by Jeff Loeb and illustrated by Tim Sale, feels more like a Clark Kent story than a Superman one. It's a very personal story on the character that focuses more on the human than invincible, loved by many superhero side of him. Though there are some superhero moments in there, of course, because it is a superhero comic. The name of this story can also be taken very literally, seeing as it does take place in all 4 seasons for each of its 4 issues, starting in spring and ending in the winter. Also, with each season/issue being narrated and shown from another character's perspective, like Jonathan Kent, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor, and I think Lana Lang in the final one. But it shows the Man of Steel from his teenage years living in Smallville, working on the farm, to his early years of Supermaning. I don't think Supermaning is a word, but we're going to use it anyway. The story starts during Clark's final year of high school. His powers start to present themselves in a way where the Kents just can't keep the secret anymore and tell him the whole he was found in a space pond that fell from the sky story that everybody knows. Already at the start of the story, Clark is going through some heavy stuff. But when Smallville gets hit with a really nasty tornado, Clark decides to use his powers and help out. He even ends up saving somebody by getting them away from a near-death event, an exploding gas station. But after seeing the effects of the tornado, what it's done to his parents' farm and the rest of Smallville, he feels a little bit of guilt. He feels that he could have done better or do more. And then he makes the decision that he should use what was given to him to help others in need. But to do that, he has to put on his big boy pants and leave Smallville. Already, this is such a well done start to the story that catches the attention of the reader by making you interested in the character of Clark. Which is something I really loved about this story because beforehand I used to think, yeah, Superman is cool, but I didn't really get it. There's no big bad guy like Doomsday or Darkseid because it's not that kind of story. It doesn't really have a big plot. Sure, there's Lex Luthor doing his little supervillain schemes, but at its core, the point of the story is just the man behind Superman. This story's main strength is its characters because that's the point, and I love it. It's also not the typical Superman story that I'm used to seeing in other media where they make the whole Superman is an alien the main point, you know, that he's a Kryptonian. Whereas in this story, he feels alienated. I can do things that no other human can. How can I use that for good? And I just think that this kind of story makes the character more relatable and impactful to the reader. I think I'm using the correct words. God, the more I talk about this, the more I love it. And I haven't even talked about the art yet. I don't know much about the illustrator for this story, but I know he did Spider-Man Blue and I think Batman Lawn Halloween, but I haven't read those yet. At first, I really did not like the art style, I'll be honest. I found it to be incredibly ugly. Superman has this abnormally ginormous chin and this huge chest like the cartoons did, but even bigger. He looks bigger than Broly in his legendary form. But the more pages I read through, the more it grew on me. I think for the art, the best part is the coloring by Bjarne Hansen, if I'm not wrong. It is absolutely beautiful with its smooth watercolor looking art. It makes the background and the character pop even more. I love it. I can't think of any other word to describe it. It's just amazing. Every single detail. The shading, the colors of the clothing, the lighting, it's all done so well, it makes the story just that much better to look at. Like I said before, the more I talk about it, the more I love it. I think my initial score for this story was about a 7.4-ish, which, looking at it now, is absolutely bonkers because I think it is at least a very high 8 out of 10. I'd say currently maybe 8.8, 8.9, I'm not too sure. What I'm very sure of, though, is that for my first ever Superman standalone comic where it's just him, nothing about the Justice League, it's just pure Superman, I started with an absolutely beautiful story. I'm really glad I read this, and I definitely recommend it if you want a short, quick read that doesn't require you to have read 50 million comics already. It is a great, self-contained story on Clark Kent and his persona Superman, but also the people that are important to Superman. For All Seasons, like I said, is gonna have to get an extremely high 8 out of 10 for me, and I really recommend it. Like I said before, it is just a fantastic story that purely focuses on the great characters in Superman's life. And I think that it's the best part, and many other people agree with me because that's the main focus. But that's pretty much all I have to say about For All Seasons. It was a really short video, so I'm sorry about that, but it was just such a great read and I really had to talk about it. If you have any other comics, anime, or manga you want to see me talk about in the future though, please DM me on my socials, or just put it in the comments down below. Also, all of my links to all of my socials, so Fiverr, Instagram, all that, linked in the description. That's it for me though, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye.